So we are reading Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. We are on chapter 12, page number 171 of the book, and page number 30. So, Shipra, where are you? Go back. You were in the right place, Beta.
Oh.
Yeah, page number 34 of the PDF. Chalo.
The theoretical understanding at which we have arrived in our study of consciousness provides a context which may be applied to any field of human activity. This can be illustrated by an examination of sports. A good example, because sport is so widely observed and extensively documented, great heroes of sports have been celebrated throughout history at least as much as great figures in science, the arts, or any other area of cultural achievement. Sports figures symbolize for all of us the possibilities of excellence and, at the level of the champion, mastery. What is it in athletics that brings a crowd to its feet and commands wildly enthusiastic loyalty? At first, we might think it is pride, a fascination with competition and triumph. But while these motives may produce pleasure and excitement, they cannot account for the far greater emotions of respect and awe elicited by a display of athletic excellence. What animates the crowd is an intuitive recognition of the heroic striving required to overcome human limitation and achieve new levels of prowess.
So it's, you see, again, using the testing method that we've been using with at the level of consciousness at which the sportsman is performing, right? Now, what it says very clearly here is that a sports personality may be operating out of ego and pride, right? Which naturally operates at about 175 in the level of consciousness. But a true sportsman gets the respect and the awe of the crowd. He has to be operating above 200. Otherwise, he will not get the respect and awe. And this can be actually tested as to which sportsman is operating at which level of consciousness.
High states of consciousness also are frequently experienced by athletes. It is well documented that long-distance runners frequently attain sublime states of peace and joy.
So now this is very important, right? To run that long distance, to get into that endurance, you have to go into something like an overdrive in a car. So when you put your gear in the 6th gear, for example, the car goes into overdrive, right? So like that, the athlete also has to go into overdrive when they are running these long distances. The chemicals which are secreted in the body can take you into a euphoric state, which can lead you into a high state of consciousness, which can enhance your performance.
This very elevation of consciousness, in fact, often inspires the prolonged transcendence of pain and exhaustion necessary to achieve higher levels of performance. This phenomenon is commonly described in terms of pushing oneself to the point where one suddenly breaks through a performance barrier and the activity becomes effortless. The body then seems to move with great and ease of its own accord, as though animated by some invisible force. The accompanying state of joy is quite distinct from the thrill of success. It is a joy of peace and oneness with all that lives.
So again, when we are shifting, right, when you're going into that state, you're getting into the flow. The performance becomes effortless, right? And you are connecting into a state of oneness where you are just doing, but instead of doing, you start being, and the performance automatically gets enhanced.
It is notable that this transcendence of the personal self and surrender to the very essence or spirit of life often occurs at a point just beyond the apparent limit of the athlete's ability.
So what does this imply, right? When you stretch yourself beyond your capacity, you raise your bar and you are in that state of oneness, you shift into the sixth gear, right? You shift into that state where now you're not making any effort and everything is happening effortlessly. It's just happening. You're not making it happen. So that, there's a subtle shift. And that is when that is when your performance gets enhanced.
The seeming barrier is predicted by the paradigm of one's own past accomplishments or of what has been recognized as theoretically possible, such
So what does this imply, right? We are operating out of belief systems. So once you are coming to the limit of your belief system, that is when you start transcending your belief system, when you're going into this overdrive.
such as the historic 4-minute mile. Until Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, it was universally accepted that it was not humanly possible to run any faster. Bannister's greatness was not just in breaking the record, but in breaking through that paradigm to a new model of human possibility.
So again, we are constantly restricting ourselves because of the belief system, right? The belief system puts us in a box. This is something that we are talking about in all the programs also, that the idea is to transcend our belief system. The moment we transcend our belief system, our performance can raise a notch. We can go into the next zone.
This breakthrough to new levels of potential has correspondences in every field of human endeavor. In many diverse enterprises, those who have achieved greatness have given parallel accounts of the circumstances surrounding their accomplishments.
So again, when you're going into these expanded states, that is when your performance gets enhanced. And many people have commented on this. Like even artists, they say that I got a download. A sculpture, a person who makes sculptures will say, I saw the thing inside. I didn't make anything. I just removed the chips. So you're going into an altered state and actually observing something. Likewise, the sportsman is also shifted into that sixth gear because of something coming into the system, which allows them to take that extra leap, that extra one step, that raising the bar, and then the performance gets enhanced.
We have made calibrations of various kinds of rewards of athletic achievement, including movies. Of all of the movies about sport studied, the French film The Big Blue produced the highest calibration 1. This is the story of the world's deep sea diving champion, Jacques Mayol, the Frenchman who for many years until very recently held the world record. The movie, it says retard. Record. The movie calibrates at the extraordinary energy level of 700, the universal truth. The movie itself has the capacity to put viewers into a high state of consciousness. The manager of one movie house which showed it described audiences wandering out of the theater, last in silence or crying with a joy which they could not describe.
So again, what are you associating with? What are you connecting with, right? Now, if you are going to connect with something that is calibrated at a higher level of consciousness than in which you exist or you are living your life, automatically it will create a shift in your state of consciousness. So if that movie was calibrated at 700 and people who were watching the movie, they would automatically shift to near about 700, which would result in actually changes in the way that they are looking at things, changes in the way that they are living life, because they've shifted into a higher level of consciousness, right? So that's why it becomes very important for us to actually start associating with things around us that calibrate at a higher level of consciousness than that we operate at. Okay.
The movie achieves an accurate depiction of the world's greatest deep sea in elevated states of consciousness through the use of slow motion photography. A subjective sensation of slow motion, beauty, and grace is frequently noted in higher states. Time seems to stop, and there is an inner silence despite the noise of the world.
Right. So whenever we are getting into these higher states, or automatically what starts happening is you start achieving, or you start connecting to a deep silence within you, a stillness within you. Now, this is also when people are going into the expanded states or the higher focus levels, people automatically feel these states, right? So if I had posted the sharing of the first online gateway program that we did, listen to the sharing of those people, right? Every one of them will say we are connected to a deep stillness within us. So it shifts your state of consciousness. Yes, Raghuji?
I just want to know the name of the movie.
The Big Blue, it's in French. The Big Blue.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Aisha?
I wanted to say that when you see a movie about sports or any of this, actually they do exactly this to show the audience. When the guy is running the thing, suddenly there's silence and they go into slow motion.
Correct.
So they actually graphically show you how they are in a different space altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. They shift gears.
They shift gears.
You can see the shift of the gear when it happens in the athlete's conscious, in the physical way that the athlete is actually working or running or performing or whatever. So when the athlete is going into a zone, you will find that there is a shift in the state of consciousness of the athlete.
We see throughout the film that Jacques Mayol maintains this state by the intensity of his concentration, which keeps him in an almost constant meditative condition. In this mode, he transcends ordinary human limitations, enabled to achieve great feats through altered physiology. The deeper he dives, the slower his heartbeat, and his blood distribution concentrates almost entirely in his brain, as does that of the porpoise.
So now this is important, right? The brain requires the maximum oxygen. It requires a maximum amount of nutrients. And the blood supply, the body prioritizes sending blood and oxygen to the brain, even to the detriment of supplying blood and nutrients to other parts of the body, because the brain requires the most and it consumes a lot of energy of the body system. We think that our physical body uses more energy, but the brain actually consumes a very large percentage of all the energy that is being consumed in our physical body.
His best friend, himself a highly evolved athlete, dies in an attempt to match Mayol's feat because he has not reached the level of consciousness required to transcend the normal limits of the body.
So as we go into higher states of consciousness, our endurance levels also start to increase. That is why you hear stories of the Rishi Munis and all that doing a lot of austerities, etc. But having said that, in my belief, it is not necessary to do austerity to get into these higher states of consciousness. The idea is to be able to be in those states of consciousness and live your day-to-day life, which in my view is more important than going off somewhere in the caves and then performing austerities and punishing yourself to just show that you can do something, right? So it's very important to be in that state of consciousness.
The subjective experience of effortless bliss also occurs in other types of exceptional physical performance, such as that of the world famous Sufi dancers known as whirling dervishes, who, through discipline and exhausting practice, become able to move effortlessly through space over long periods of time with dazzling precision.
Now, this is again, the whirling workshops are conducted by Zia, and I've been monitoring all those workshops. In fact, I did whirling long time back, but now I've been monitoring the workshops, and you can actually see the shifts happening in the people when they are doing the whirling. And many times, let me tell you, I have tears in my eyes when I'm seeing them doing the whirling, because I can feel the shift that is happening in their state of awareness, their state of consciousness, in their state of being. And it actually starts to affect me while I'm watching them on the screen. Okay. So, of course, if the shifts are created in you, if you are associated with that, it will create a shift in you also. Right. So I would highly recommend people who've not experienced the whirling workshop. Of course, she's not scheduled anything, but if you've not experienced it, it is really worth the experience at least once in your life. At least experience the experience for the experience.
The most highly developed martial arts clearly demonstrate how motive and principle are of the ultimate importance in extraordinary athletic achievement. The most frequently heard admonition to trainee is stop trying to use force. 3 schools devoted to these arts produce masters whose overriding concern is victory of the higher self over the lower self through control, training, and commitment to goals aligned with true power. Alignment with these high power attractor patterns is not limited to the exercise of the discipline itself, but becomes an entire lifestyle. Thus, when the power of the principle is transferred to the practitioner, the results begin to be manifested everywhere in his life.
So this is beautiful, right? So martial arts takes you into your deeper self. It connects you into a higher state of consciousness. So where your discipline is not only during the practice of the martial art, it totally reflects in your life. So it creates a change in the way that you're thinking, the way that you're doing, the way that you're being, if you're truly connecting with the principles of the martial arts. So the martial arts, of course, is used to protect yourself, to attack others, etc. But the true shift comes when you connect into that deeper self of your own consciousness. And it's a given fact, when people do like this, and then they hit, right? The force that comes out of that fist banging the wood or whatever, the ice slab, etc., is actually more than what the muscle can technically generate. It comes from that inner core of yourself, and that any energy is actually projected outwards. But that can only come when you have activated the chi, when you have activated the chi in your hara, and then it comes out with real force, which is beyond the capacity of the physical body. So again, they are shifting their states of consciousness and then doing what they are doing.
The hallmark of true greatness in athletic achievement is always humility, such as that exhibited by Pablo Morales after winning his gold medals in the 1992 Summer Olympics.
So again, this becomes very, very important, right? If you're operating at a higher state of consciousness, then you're not going to be egoistic about whatever you're doing. Many of the athletes, they operate at the level of pride. So they'll start having ego when they have achieved something. But if an athlete is truly operating from a higher state of consciousness, then humility is the hallmark. Okay. Ego is not there. And you'll find that real athletes, the true athletes, will not operate out of ego. They will have a gentleness around themselves. because their practice of practicing their art will automatically connect them to a spiritual realm or a higher state of consciousness.
Such athletes express gratitude, inner awe, and an awareness that their performance was not merely the result of a personal effort. That maximum personal effort brought them to the breakthrough point from which they were then transported by a power greater than that of the individual self. This typically is expressed as the discovery of some aspect of the self hitherto known unknown or unexperienced in its pure form.
So again, what does it mean, right? Over here, what he's saying is that you can take it to a level where your personal endurance hits a high and you can't go beyond that. That is when that spiritual essence, that blessing, that tathastu starts to come in and shift you into a level which was not possible with your normal physical body.
Through kinesiology, we can demonstrate that if one is motivated by any of the energy fields below courage, one gets weak. The notorious Achilles heel that brings down not just athletes, but the potentially great in all areas of human achievement is pride. Pride, calibrated at 175, not only makes the performer go weak, but cannot provide the motivational power of love, honor, or dedication to a higher principle, or even to excellence itself. If we ask a powerful athlete to hold in mind the hope of defeating his opponent, or becoming a star, or making a lot of money, we will see that he goes weak and we can put down his trained muscular arm with minimal effort.
So now what is happening? As soon as you connect yourself to a lower attractor field, you will go weak and your performance will get affected. So the idea must always be to do your best, to perform to the best of your ability, and may the best man win, right? If you're operating from there, then you're focusing on your performance. You're not focusing on the other guy's performance. But if you start focusing on the other guy's performance, then you stop giving energy to your own performance and your performance will fall. So it's always better to look at yourself, what you are doing, rather than looking at what the other guy is doing. So you're not attempting to defeat him. You're attempting to perform your best.
The same athlete holding in mind the honor of his country or his sport or the dedication of his performance to someone he loves or even the sheer joy of maximum effort for the sake of excellence goes powerfully strong, and we cannot push down his arm even with the greatest effort.
So again, as soon as he connects to higher states of consciousness, the stuff which puts us on the right side of the grid, right, automatically he becomes strong.
Thus, the competitor motivated by pride or greed, or interested primarily in defeating an opponent, will go weak at the moment of the starting gun and be unable to achieve the maximum continued effort necessary for great achievement. At times, we see an athlete start badly for such reasons, but as the contest progresses and self goals are forgotten, improve his performance. We also see the opposite happen when an athlete starts well because he is competing for the honor of his country, his team, or of the sport itself, and then falters as he nears the goal and the anticipation of personal glory or triumph over a rival makes him lose strength and form. One unfortunate sequence of consciousness occurs when an athlete sets a new record during qualifying trials, arousing new personal ambitions, and then during the final competition goes to pieces to the puzzlement of the audience. If top performers are imbued with the belief that their excellence is not a personal accomplishment, but a gift belonging to all of mankind. As a demonstration of man's potential, they will go strong and remain so through any event.
So again, we must be aware, right, that when an athlete is performing, there are many people behind him who make him achieve that performance. So if he says that I did it, then again it becomes a problem. He's connecting to lower attractor fields. So there again, humility, gratitude, appreciation starts to come into work, right? So again, which side of the grid is the athlete operating from? That's the question that we need to ask.
The scale of consciousness may be seen in one aspect as a scale of ego, which the level of 200 being the fulcrum at which selfishness begins to turn to selflessness. At the rarefied plane of Olympic competition, the disastrous consequences, both in private and in public life, of motivations emanating from levels below 200 are all too clearly illustrated by the recent debacle of figure skater Tonya Harding. This athlete's excessive zeal to capture an Olympic medal and defeat her rival, Nancy Kerrigan, by any means available, led her to abandon the power of ethical principle and descend to the grossest level of force. There could hardly be a more telling example of how submission to a negative attractor field can produce a rapid collapse of an otherwise promising athletic career.
So again, as soon as you're connecting to a lower attractor field, you're creating a problem for yourself. That's why we are constantly saying, where are you operating from? What is the level of consciousness that you're operating from? We must be aware from where we are operating.
Where higher motivations toward excellence give access to the realm of grace and power, self-centered motivations of personal gain draw one almost magnetically into the realm of force. The reaping of recognition, even in the symbolic form of a medal, let alone the financial reward that may accompany it, has little to do with true athletic greatness, which proceeds from an attainment of stature of the spirit. It is this that we laud in the champion. Even if the competitor does not surrender to the lust for wealth and fame, so prominent in the case just cited, the drive to attain dominance in one sport rather than to simply manifest all the excellence of which one is capable, has its own corrupting, egocentric effect. Entrainment by the negative forces associated with the level of pride.
So again, very, very clear, right? What is it that we really want to adore in a sportsman? As soon as the sportsman starts operating out of ego and pride, the sportsman is cutting his own feet, right? And the basic point is that if you want to excel by defeating people, you're operating from a lower attractor field. If you are operating from the fact that I want to excel in what I want to do my best, then automatically you connect with a higher attractor field. And that is the way that we should always operate, whether anything that we do, forget sportsmen, whatever we do, what is the state of consciousness with which we are doing it, starts becoming operative.
There is nothing intrinsically wrong with some manifestations of pride. We all may well be proud when we take the America's Cup or our Olympians win medals. It is an honoring of human achievement that transcends personal pride. We honor the endeavor, not the personal accomplishment, which is only the occasion and expression of something greater, universal, and innate in the human heart. The Olympics, one of the greatest dramas of human striving and one which captures everyone's imagination, should counteract personal pride. The whole setting inspires the competitor to move from personal pride to an esteem, which is an expression of unconditional love.
So over here it says, one that also honors one's opponents for their dedication to the same lofty principles. Now we had this occasion, I think in the Olympics, which just went away, this high jumper, right? The other competitor injured himself, and the say competitor A injured himself. So competitor B said, okay, I will also not jump. We will share the medal. You get that? Now that is it is a innovation of true sportsman spirit. You have these examples of these children who are special children. They were running a race and one of them fell. Every one of them came back, helped him, and they all crossed the line together. So where is that coming from? What is the state of consciousness would those children be operating from? They're not out there to beat someone. They're not out there to win against someone. They are out there to support each other to move into a higher zone. That is what we need to be doing. If everyone started doing that, there would be no war, there would be no competition, and everyone would win, right? If we are supporting each other, but if we are wanting to dominate someone else, then again, it creates a problem for us.
The media tend to evoke the downside of sports and undermine the athlete because celebrity status, either consciously or unconsciously, elicits this egotism. Great athletes need to gird themselves against this source of contamination. Humility and gratitude seem to be the only effective shield against the onslaughts of media exploitation. Athletes in the traditional martial arts employ specific exercises to overcome any tendency towards egotism. The dedication of one's skill, performance, or career to a higher principle provides the only absolute protection.
So again, humility and gratitude, okay, are the tools which work against you getting egoistic. Okay, now this doesn't happen only in sports. Spiritual egotism is the worst of the lot. Okay, now this is true for any activity that we do in our life. That's why when we are operating out of gratitude, if we are grateful for what we have, if we are grateful for all the support that we are getting, because we may think we are doing something, but we are supported by a lot of people. A lot of things have to happen for us to be able to achieve something. So that's why gratitude and humility in whatever we are doing becomes extremely, extremely important.
True athletic power is characterized by grace, sensitivity, inner quiet, and paradoxically, gentleness in the non-competitive lives of even fierce competitors. We celebrate the champion because we recognize that he has overcome personal ambition through sacrifice and dedication to higher principles. The great become legendary when they teach by example. It is not what they have, nor what they do, but what they have become that inspires all of mankind. And it is that which we honor in them.
So again, we are honoring the state of being of the person, not what they are doing and what they have, what they are doing and what they are achieving. It's the state of being. When we look at it from a higher spiritual perspective, that is more important.
We should seek to protect their humility from the forces of exploitation that accompany acclaim in the everyday world. We need to educate the public that the abilities of these athletes and their great performances are gifts to mankind to be respected and defended from the abuse of the media and corporate commerce.
So again, the media and people around the athlete or anyone who's doing well will always fan the fire, right? Make them more egoistic. Arey, you are the best. No one can beat you. This, that. Now, as soon as there's a performance default, everyone will run away, right? So we need to be very aware as to who are we surrounding ourselves with. Are they fanning our egotism, or are they actually bringing us back to ground reality to operate out of humility and gratitude and appreciation? That becomes again very important. So who are we moving around with? Who have we got ourselves around? Who are we connecting with? Who are we communicating with? Again, all these things become very, very important.
The Olympic spirit resides within the heart of every man and woman. Great athletes can, by example, awaken awareness of that principle in all people. These heroes and their spokesmen have a potentially powerful influence on all of mankind, literally, the power to lift the world on their shoulders. The nurturing of excellence and recognition of its value is the responsibility of all men, because the quest for excellence in any area of human endeavor inspires us all towards the actualization of every form of man's yet unrealized greatness.
So again, the 4-minute mile, the barrier was broken. The 10-second 100 meters, the barrier was broken. Every year we see new barriers or new records being formed. So what is that? We are moving towards better and better excellence. So the idea is to always attempt to do better than what we performed yesterday, because we build on our performance which we had previously.
Social power and the human spirit. When we cheer the spirit of the true athlete, what we applaud is a demonstration of all the significances in the word spirit entails for us: courage, tenacity, commitment, alignment with principle, demonstration of excellence, honor, respect, and humility. To inspire implies filling the spirit. Dispirited means dejected, hopeless, defeated. But what exactly does the term spirit signify? The collective totality of human experience can be comprehended by spirit in phrases such as team spirit, or when we exhort people to get into the spirit. That spirit is a highly pragmatic factor which can determine the difference between victory and defeat, is well known by military commanders, coaches, and CEOs. An employee or other group member who doesn't enter into the spirit of the group enterprise soon finds himself without a job or group.
So again, that collective consciousness coming in, that team playing coming in, one for all and all for one starting to come in, right, becomes very important again to enhance performance.
From all the above, it is clear that the term spirit refers to an unseen essence, and that although its expression varies from one situation to another, the essence itself never changes. This essence is vital. When we lose our spirit, we die, we expire from lack of that which inspires.
So again, what is driving us? That central core within us that is driving us, that is connected to that spirit or that spiritual aspect of ourselves. And that is what we need to connect with.
Clinically speaking, then, we can say that spirit equates with life. The energy of life itself can be termed spirit. Spirit is the aliveness that accompanies and is an expression of alignment with life energy. The power of high energy attractor patterns is anabolic, sustaining life. Their opposites are catabolic, eventually leading to death.
So now anything that is depleting will suck your energy out. Anything that is uplifting will put energy into your system, right? Now, if you're constantly operating in a depleted state, then you're bound to start getting unhealthy. You're bound to start feeling lethargic, digestive systems collapsing, not enjoying anything. You're constantly in that, then you are going to get sucked out.
True power equals life equals spirit, whereas force equals weakness equals death. When an individual has lost or lacks those qualities we term spiritual, he becomes devoid of humanity, love, and self-respect, perhaps selfish and violent. When a nation veers from its alignment with the spirit of man, it can become an international criminal. It is a common error to identify spirituality with religion. We have noted that the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence clearly differentiate between the spiritual and the religious. Government is forbidden to establish any religion, lest it impair the freedom of the people. Yet, these same documents presume that government's authority derives from spiritual principles. In fact, the founders of the world's great religions would be shocked at the profoundly unspiritual deeds wrought in their names through history, much that would make a heathen shudder. Force always distorts truth for its own self-serving purposes.
So again, force is always selfish. It acts out of ego. So it will put self-interest before the interest of the whole. Whereas if you're operating from spirituality, you're operating at the higher states of consciousness above 200, you will always look out for the whole. Okay. So you will sacrifice for the whole because you want to hold the integrity of the whole rather than connect with the small self or the small ego, which doesn't look after the whole.
Over time, the spiritual principles upon which religions are based become distorted for expedient ends such as power, money, and other worldliness. Whereas the spiritual is tolerant, religiosity is commonly intolerant. The former leads to peace, the latter to strife, bloodshed, and pious criminality. There remains, however, buried within every religion, the spiritual foundation from which it originated. Like religions, entire cultures are weakened when the principles upon which they are based are obscured or contaminated by false interpretation. To more fully understand the nature of spirit in power and how it originates and operates as a social movement, we will do well to study a contemporary spiritual organization of enormous power and influence, about which everything is of public record, but which is avowedly aligned with the spirit of man and yet flatly states that it is not religious. That is the 55-year-old organization known as Alcoholics Anonymous.
So again, what are we connecting with, right? There's a very big difference between being spiritual and being religious. When you're religious, you're practicing certain rituals, right? But a religious person may be spiritual. A spiritual person may not be religious, okay? But it doesn't mean that they are not spiritual. So we have to understand what is the level of consciousness again that we are operating in. So ultimately, it always boils down to what is the state of consciousness that you are operating at. So AI, again, Alcoholic Anonymous was again created by someone to actually help alcoholics. And now you have AA self-help groups all over the world.
We all know something about AA because it has become woven into the very fabric of modern society, and its adherents number is in the millions. It and its offshoot organizations have been estimated to affect, in one way or another, the lives of about 50% of Americans at this time. Even where the 12 step-based self-help groups do not enter lives directly, they affect everyone indirectly because they reinforce certain values by example. Let us study the power principles upon which Alcoholics Anonymous is based and how this foundation came about historically, and examine the impact these principles have within the general population as well as among members. We can look at what AA is and also what it is not and learn from both. AA is, according to its preamble, not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, or organization.
So it is beyond religion, okay? It is operating as a spiritual concept. They don't say it, but it is actually a spiritual concept.
In addition, it has no opinion on outside matters. It is neither for nor against any other approach to the problem of alcoholism. It has no dues or fees, no ceremonies, no trappings, no officers, no laws. It owns no property, has no edifices. Not only are all members equal, but all AA groups are autonomous and self-supporting. Even the 12 basic steps by which members recover are specified as only suggestions. The use of coercion of any kind is avoided, and this is emphasized by slogans such as easy does it, first things first, and most importantly, live and let live.
So again, in Alcoholic Anonymous, there are 12 steps. And people who are alcoholics or who have some kind of addiction, you follow the 12 steps and it helps you to recover.
Alcoholics Anonymous respects freedom in that it leaves choice up to the individual. Its identifiable power patterns are those of honesty, responsibility, humility, service, and the practice of tolerance, goodwill, and brotherhood.
So again, the first step is look out for the other guy. You're not going to look only at yourself, number one, and it implies freedom. So you have responsibility for your choices. So you take responsibility for yourself and you have freedom to choose. But of course, the uplifting emotions of honesty, responsibility, humility, and service, tolerance, goodwill, and brotherhood, these are key to the entire process.
AA does not subscribe to any particular ethic, has no code of right and wrong or good and bad, and avoids moral judgments. AA does not try to control anyone, including its own members. What it does instead is to chart a path. It merely says to its members, if you practice these principles in all your affairs, you will recover from this grave and progressive fatal illness and regain your health, self-respect, and the capacity to live a fruitful and fulfilling life for yourself and others.
So again, people who go to AI are down under, they're in depression, they're alcoholic, they're drinking alcohol all the time. They cannot restrict themselves drinking alcohol, right? So, and doing all sorts of things to get the alcohol. So again, what happens when you start connecting, automatically you start getting self-respect for yourself, right? Now, most of the time, who is the biggest critic of us? Ourselves. So we are constantly beating ourselves down, and people who are alcoholics, they really beat themselves down. So the self-respect starts getting blunted. So over here, it's very important for recovery purposes to understand what is the level at you're operating at, and then protect yourself by enhancing your self-respect.
AA is the original example of the power of these principles to cure hopeless disease and change the destructive personality patterns of members. From this paradigm came all subsequent forms of group therapy, through the discovery that groups of people coming together on a formal basis to address their mutual problems have enormous power.
So again, when all of us are focusing our attention on something, we can create very big shifts. That's why group meditation, group tasks become important. There is an exercise that is played in the Gateway Voyage. It is called vibe flow. Okay, where vibrations are played. You hear these sounds which are high in vibrations, and you're taken into different states using the vibrations. And in the institute, at the Monroe Institute, they have installed from the Human Global Consciousness Initiative a random number generator. And they found that during the vibe flow exercise, maximum deviation in the random number generator took place. So the random number generator is generating zeros and ones. And ultimately, you should have equal numbers of zeros and ones. But if you can influence the number which comes up, that means you're screening what needs to actually come up. So people who can go into higher states, right, they can actually screen things. You can go into a higher state and then rectify yourself, because you connect with a deeper state of yourself, and it starts enhancing your self-esteem.
Al-Anon for the spouses of AA members, then Al-Ateen for their children, then Gamblers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Parents Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, and so on. There are now close to 300 anonymous 12-step self-help organizations dealing with every form of human suffering. Americans, as a result of all this, have now largely turned from condemning self-destructive behaviors to recognizing that these conditions are indeed curable diseases. From a practical viewpoint, the sizable impact of self-help organizations on society can be counted not only in the relief of human suffering and the reconstitution of families, but in savings of billions of dollars.
Absenteeism,
automobile insurance rates, welfare, healthcare, and penal system costs are all greatly moderated by the widespread behavioral change produced by this movement. The cost of state-provided counseling and group therapy atone for millions of troubled individuals served would be staggering.
So again, if you can get self-esteem into a person, you can get the person to operate from a higher state of consciousness, the performance will automatically improve. The health will improve. So now today, if the state has to look after the health and they have to pay, unemployment benefits, etc., then it's costing the exchequer money. Now, using these principles, if a person can rectify and heal themselves and get their self-esteem back, number one, all these costs are not incurred, and the person becomes a productive part of society. So he starts working in society. He becomes a generator rather than a depleter.
The members of these organizations, by the millions, unanimously agree that admitting the limitations of their individual egos allowed them to experience a true power, and that it is that power which brought about their recovery, which hitherto nothing on earth, including medicine, psychiatry, or any branch of modern science, has been able to effect.
Okay, so these organizations really can create change in the world. And for example, even what we are doing in awareness, for example, and now there are so many organizations doing the same thing. If you can arrange a shift in this level of consciousness of a person, the person becomes more equanimous, they start becoming more gentle, they start operating in a better state of consciousness in their lives, they become happier, they become more satisfied, okay, they operate from gratitude, then automatically everyone around them also starts getting affected. So it's a ripple effect that gets created, which is what we are actually ultimately looking for. Okay, I think we can stop here. Now, I just have an announcement. Tomorrow, we will not have the book reading. Actually, Shipriya has something going on, so we will not have the book reading. But if you all are interested, we can have a sharing of all the books that we've read. If anyone wants to talk about it, share things about it, any of the programs that we've had, I think we can have a discussion on that.